Thank you. I can't tell you how honored I've been to have been invited and what I've learned to watch you doing this as volunteers. I think this is a refreshing recall of what America is and should be and can be. So I don't know if what I'm going to tell you will make any sense. I'm going to try to talk to you in a way that will give you some idea of what you need to do in your states and what politics is like maybe in your states that you never knew before. New Mexico, though, is so unique. I don't know if my experiences in New Mexico will at all hold over for you. And let me give you just some, for those of you that have been to New Mexico, you know how wonderful it is, you know how culturally diverse it is, you know how unique it is. It's just this gem, this poor state, but often thought of by ourselves as incredibly corrupt. Auditing in New Mexico, I'll give you a true story of what auditing in New Mexico means. In a not so recent election, a county official was called and asked, who was in charge of the vote count, and asked, well, how many votes does candidate so-and-so have? And the immediate response was, well, how many does he need? That was the audit. Remember, we have always done our elections without any kind of paper trail or verification. So the answer of how many is needed was the only audit. The other thing that because it is so unique and different, we take that on as our cultural difference and our identity. The other thing that you could say about that we say about ourselves, this will give you an idea. Poor New Mexico, so far from heaven and close to Texas. So we are always being overshadowed by somebody else in a much bigger way. But now that elections become close, we find that we're inordinately important because the electoral votes of these close states means that, while it used to be millions of dollars being spent in California, since California is no longer important, those millions of dollars for a population of 1.8 million are being spent in New Mexico, which is just overwhelming to the population. So in 1980, along with Florida, we had tremendous problems. We had tremendous problems again in 2004. Or did I say 1980? I meant 2000. 2000, well, 1982. It revealed the depth of the problem and the inability to overcome the problem. And it became a catalyst. That catalyst really had a couple of different, really critical, important elements. From the close election was generated a lawsuit. And the lawsuit became apparently clear that made it clear that the system was broken, it wasn't working, and that lawsuit brought to legislators the fact that we could no longer run our elections like this and be taken seriously. Also from that close election, we had something, again, which may be so unique to New Mexico, but the vote people finally, you all, and the New Mexico chapter got organized. And the one thing about New Mexico is, although we have this cultural Hispanic heritage that has overwhelmed the state, the one most important Anglo element has been the national laboratories. And so many of the vote folks came from the national laboratories, and their credentials were impeccable and irrefutable. They then convinced the governor. And once you had the governor, then you got the Secretary of State, and once you got the Secretary of State, we had reform. We had the most sweeping reform bill in the nation. Unfortunately, the two elements that were left out were audit and recount provisions. But after that incredible push to get that passed, fatigue set in. The governor is now, and by the way, the governor was an incredible hero, and have I mentioned he's running for president? The point is, he was a hero in this. No reform would have happened without the activists, from your group coming forward, convincing the governor, and the governor really dragging the legislature, kicking and screaming to reform. And within the legislature, there were a few key allies. For instance, I am chairman of the Senate Judiciary. The bill spent 4 hours in my committee. It was in and it was out. As chairman of the committee, I had the power to do that. And so the governor and I could work together on something we could agree on. But now this fatigue is set in. We've actually now, the general populace is convinced that with a paper trail, all is well, and you don't need to go any further. We had a close election where after a kind of audit and recount work, the loser conceded. And because there was this paper trail, once the challenger conceded, the election was over, and most people thought it had been done fairly. We have unfortunately, we have a new Secretary of State who is not on board with this, and so add that to the fatigue and an election that looked like it was done properly, and this is a problem. The other thing I want to mention, it's been mentioned a few times here, all legislators belong to something called the National Council of State Legislatures, NCSL. We have to get more involved in that group. This last summer, NCSL had its national conference, 7,000 legislators, and it was a miserable failure. The one session that I attended on voting, they had a representative of the voting machines who dominated and was able to cloud every issue that was brought up by other people on the panel, I thought. Now, that was just as a spectator from the outside. The other thing is that there is some question about the money that was spent and how it was spent, and so people are a little leery. The good thing is we have some new players in the back of the room here. You all haven't recognized her yet, but we have the new county clerk from the county of Bernalillo, my county, the biggest county, a rising star in New Mexico politics, who can take us a long way down the audit road. I want to just say in closing, you know, this uniqueness has brought us to this point. I'll give you a story. In the 1880s, of course, like you've heard of Custer and you've heard of Sheridan, all those generals that fought in the Civil War and they had nothing to do with them, they made them territorial governors. We got a territorial governor by the name of Lew Wallace, who you all probably don't know. He hated New Mexico. He spent a whole 4 years in a mansion, didn't come out, railed against New Mexico. He was famous, though, for signing the warrant that led to Billy the Kid's death. And by the way, Billy the Kid was on the right side of that. But on the train as he was leaving, he said, all knowledge based on experience elsewhere fails in New Mexico. Now, we're proud of that. But I'll bet you, if you get down to the subconscious of a lot of your election officials, your problems is we don't do it like that here. And we can't do that here. And underneath that, we use this as a sign of pride that we're different. But I'll bet you you are up against the same thing over and over again. And to overcome that, I would like to give you one little piece of advice. Tip O'Neill, in his book, said, all politics is local. I would disagree with that in one little respect. All politics is personal. You get to know the politician, and you have the key to success.